Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the Seiko SRPA21 PADI turtle. We'll talk about what all that means later on, but this is an interesting little watch. It's a mechanical watch, which is a little different for my channel, but thinking I might do some more mechanical reviews, who knows. Let's go on ahead and do a quick size comparison. First off, though, I actually want to talk about the size of this guy a little bit because the online statistics are terrible. So we can see here that even though this is a pretty large looking watch, in practice, the lug-to-lug distance is relatively small. You're looking at something like 47 millimeters. So even on my very small wrists, this watch isn't completely out of line. It's a rather tall watch, absolutely 100% here. We're looking at something like 15 millimeters tall, and the diameter of it seems awfully large at 40 millimeters, but you know what? It's not as big as it seems, and hammer that home. Here is a Casio F91W for size comparison. This is an Omega Seamaster 300 Professional, which is a great watch, and this is my normal everyday carry watch. This right here is an Omega Aquaterra quartz watch. The battery is low, hence the second movement being weird, but there you go. And here is a standard US quarter, just to give you a sense of relative size. Next thing I want to highlight is that this is the Seiko turtle pattern. There are other varieties of the Seiko turtle. They're going to be similar in terms of size as well as in movement. What makes this one different is the little PADI thing down here, which we can see this PADI branding is short for Professional Association of Diving Instructors. Although for the purposes of this review, it's going to mean Professional Association of Desk Inhabitants, because I don't dive. So there you go. This is the Seiko PADI. Let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this particular very interesting little watch. Okay, so first off on the good side, the movement in this watch is very, very nice. It's got a lot of great essentials to it. This is the 4R36 movement, and it's got some great stuff to it. First off, it has the day-date complication, and in fact, it even has quick set for both of those things, day and date. So if you pull out to the first position, then you rotate upwards, it will change the day of the week, which is good for quickly adjusting that. And then if you rotate this downwards, it'll quickly change the day of the month, which again is great. If you run out of juice and the watch stops, you can get back in time very quickly. Speaking of setting the time, if you pull the crown out to the second position, the watch hacks, or that is the seconds hand stops entirely, which allows you to then wait until, say, a satellite source is right on there, so you can set your time super accurately. That is, to my mind, a beautiful thing, and it's something that's missing on some of Seiko's cheaper movements. Next thing, this guy hand winds, which means at the very first position, if you just turn the crown, it's going to be putting power directly into the power reserve, into the mainspring of this movement. And that's something that, again, cheaper Seikos don't necessarily have, and it is a beautiful thing. And the hand wind feeling on it is very nice and smooth. It's smoother than a Solito, the Sin 104, which is kind of nice. Which had a Solito movement in it. Anyways, hand winding is great because it means that if you just, if you're having been wearing the watch for a little while, but you want to keep it running, you just walk over, you give it a few dozen twists, and next thing you know, you're good for another 40-some-odd hours. Beautiful thing. Speaking of which, power reserve is about 40 hours. A-okay, no problem there. So that's great. So the movement on the whole is very, very solid. I mean, there's no real problem with this movement in terms of features. It has everything you need, not a whole lot more. Great. Next thing, the accuracy on this particular piece is actually very good for a mechanical watch. It is 4 seconds a day fast, meaning that if you let this guy run for a day, it'll be 4 seconds faster the next day than it was the day before, relative to some objective time. This is absolutely terrible by quartz watch standards, but for a mechanical, that's pretty damn good. And in fact, that's within the specs that, Rolex and whatnot aim for. So I'm really happy with the accuracy on this particular watch. That's excellent. Great surprise there. Next thing, this movement I was just complimenting is the Seiko 4R36, which means it is technically an in-house movement. A lot of the watch snobs are really in love with movements that are made in-house by luxury brands. Well, this is an in-house movement. So there you go. Next time somebody's talking about their Patek, just point to your Seiko and say, yeah, I got an in-house movement too. Take that. It won't go over well, but that's okay. Next thing, moving on. This is a dive watch, and as you might expect from a dive watch, this has great water resistance. You're looking at a 200-meter water resistance on this guy, which basically means you need not fear water. Any amount of scuba diving is probably going to be just fine. If you're a professional saturation diver, you're going to need better, but if you're a professional saturation diver, you're wearing a multi-thousand-dollar dive computer and whatnot. So there you go. But the water resistant is great. Next thing, we will talk about the price of this later, but this actually feels like a pretty reasonable value in the mechanical watch world. I will say that absolutely. The price on this guy is not bad. Someplace in the 300 to 350 range, depending on where you get it. That's a-okay to me. Next thing, this has drilled lugs, which means that these little areas right here are punched out as opposed to on a lot of watches where they're solid in the lug department. What this means is that you can take a little spring bar tool, like this little guy, and if you want to pop this spring bar out, you just push it in there and then press, and it'll pop out that spring bar. This makes bracelet changes or band changes very, very easy, and much easier than trying to get into a little gap like this here with a spring bar tool and slide it aside. That's a pain in the neck. This is really nice. So I love drilled lugs where I can get them. Next thing you know, the dial look on this guy is great. I'll see if I can really highlight it. The lighting isn't so great because I'm filming indoors, but it's got this very nice bluish sort of movement, bluish sort of coloration. And it's not just a matte blue. There's a degree of reflectivity, a bit of a sunburstitude to it, if you will. And I like that very much. This has a beautiful face, and it really nicely is complemented by this outer dial, the diver's bezel here, the Pepsi sort of coloration scheme, the red and the blue. Beautiful, goes with it nicely. And there are some other nice details here. For instance, you get a polished second hand, which is not an important thing, but it is kind of pretty. And the other thing that I very much like is that in addition to the indices, on the re-out here, you get yourselves hours and fives, and minutes and fives. Every 5 minutes you get a red mark, and then in between you get minutes. This is great because you can read to the second or to the precise minute, but it's also just attractive, and the fact that they're on that re-out gives it a little bit more three-dimensionality than some watches. So that's nice. And then finally, the crown on this guy. The position of this crown is actually great to me. It is a screw-down crown, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. But basically, it lives right here on the side of the watch. Rather than directly on the corner, like, for instance, on this little guy here, where the crown is directly pointing to the side, this is down at the bottom. And what this means is that even though this watch is a little bit on the wide side, there's really no way that by moving your hand up like this, you're going to impact the crown in any way. And it also serves as sort of a natural crown guard, because anything that hits the side of the watch is going to have a glancing blow at best. So that's a great positioning. So on the good side, I love the off-center crown. There are some nice details here. The dial look is great, and you can get other colors, of course. The drilled lugs are a beautiful thing. It feels like a reasonable value, good water resistance, in-house movement, pretty damn good accuracy on this individual piece, and the movement itself is very, very good with a lot of very nice features. So there you go. Let's talk about what's great about this watch. To me, what's greatest about this watch is the lume, or the luminous compound that's been applied to the hands as well as to the hour indices here. Lots of watches have good lume, or at least have lume, and it's a beautiful thing because it absorbs light during the day and then it emits it overnight, and so you can read your watch all night long. But this watch really raises the bar. I'm going to go ahead and charge this with a little UV flashlight here off camera, and then bring it back on camera and show you just how damn good this lume is. Not only is there very, very strong lume, but it's huge areas of it. And because of the shape of the hands for minute and hour are very different, you can see absolutely which is which, and that just leaves this watch incredibly readable all night long. It's generally even readable as you'd like, for instance, if you're in a car as a passenger, you look down at your watch, even with that kind of unadjusted eyes sort of thing, this is bright enough that you can read it. This is great, great lume, and I really wish that other manufacturers would paint it on as deep. I mean, it's better than my Omega Seamaster here, and this is doing pretty damn good in the lume department. So I love, love, love this lume, and I badly wish that every watch I owned was lumed this well. So to me, at least, as a lume snob, that's what's great here. Let's talk about what's bad. Okay, so on the bad side, first off, I do love dive watches. Don't get me wrong. I wear this guy all the damn time, and this guy is great too. And, oh, I should have mentioned this. The reason I love dive watches is because they have this dive bezel, which is great for timing things. It only rotates in one direction, because if you're underwater and this is the amount of air you got left, you don't want to go the other direction and, well, die. But nonetheless, the diving bezel is useful, and I tend to like the sporty aesthetic of them anyways. But on the bad side, I'll be honest, I felt like a jackass sitting at a desk wearing a Professional Association of Dive Instructors certified dive watch. It just rubs in the simple fact that I don't really go near water that often. So I don't know, that branding, I struggled a little bit with that, but maybe that's my own emotional instabilities working out their way here. So next thing, this is actually a fairly slow mechanical movement. Many mechanical movements run at 4 hertz, meaning they tick 4 times per second. This guy is a 3 hertz movement. You can maybe kind of see this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, etc. It's slower than most. If you are really after a super smooth mechanical hand, this is not going to sate you as much. You might have to go with a higher brand, or actually Seiko offers high beat watches that go much quicker than that. But anyways, that is something to keep in mind, and it's a little unexpected, a little different relative to a lot of mechanicals. Next thing is that this watch is honestly a little bit big. It wears smaller than the size suggests, as I've mentioned already, but it's thick, it's large. There is no getting around the fact that this is a big hunk of steel sitting on your wrist. And so you're going to want to keep that part in mind. Even just the head of the watch is not very small whatsoever. I've got this guy in a NATO strap, which helps reduce the weight a little bit relative to the bracelet, which we'll talk about later, oh rest assured. But still, there you go. Next thing, this does have a whole bunch of text on the dial. You've got your Seiko, you've got your X for prospects, you've got yourself a PADI logo, automatic, divers 200 meter. Like, yeah, we know this is a dive watch, you didn't need that part. Automatic, okay, I guess that's nice. PADI, and then the X thing. They could have gotten away with a whole lot less text on the dial. But that seems to be what's in lately. Next thing is that I don't love the bezel look on this guy. From the side here, this bezel doesn't look so stellar. It's either terribly over-polished or it's poorly stamped. Whatever it is, it's not very crisp. And at some level, that's nice because it feels relatively smooth to the hand. I mean, you can grab it, but it's not like, oh my God, grabby. But it feels like it's underdone. The way my fiance put it is it looks like a tin can around the side of it there. The case itself is beautifully done, and the polish on the case is nice. And by the way, there is no transparent case back here. It's just a little Seiko logo underneath the sticker there. But anyways, this is a nice polish, but over here, I don't know. So the sides of the bezel make this watch feel a lot cheaper than I feel like it needs to do. And then finally, on the bad side, the bezel feel isn't so great either. I mean, it works. You can hear it clicking. But it doesn't feel incredible. I have watches and I've handled watches that have a much more positive, much more, I don't know, pleasant bezel feel than this guy does. This just feels slow and kind of gooey. I don't know. Not the end of the world, but there you go. So that's what's bad here. The bezel feel isn't great. I don't love the look of the bezel. This tin can thing ain't so stellar. It's got a bunch of text on the dial. It is a little bit big still. It's got a relatively slow movement, and I do feel like a jackass wearing a Professional Association of Dive Instructors watch at a desk. But that's just my problem. Let's talk about what's ugly, because that's everybody's problem. On the ugly side, the acceptable factory accuracy range for this movement is a sad, sad joke. This particular watch is very accurate, but that is a matter of pure luck. Every watch goes out the factory door with a certain set of standards. If the watch is too fast or too slow, if it's faster or slower than this, it is a quality control issue and the watch needs to be either regulated or repaired. They have a range for this, and it is just terrible. Their acceptable daily rate is, I quote, minus 35 seconds per day to plus 45 seconds a day. This watch could be almost a minute per day fast, and Seiko would be okay with that. That's terrible. I mean, we have vastly different impressions of what acceptable means. And if I was Seiko, I would be ashamed to have this on the website for a watch that goes for $350. I mean, basically what they're saying here is we're going to sell you this watch for $350. It might be a terrible way to keep time, but that's not our problem. And okay, I know some mechanical watch guys have terrible watch Stockholm syndrome, and they're actually okay with 45 seconds a day fast in a watch you paid $350 for. That ain't me, though. I also know that you can get this regulated at your own cost if they send you a terrible watch. And that's assuming you can find a competent watchmaker, by the way. But the thing is, Seiko, I am going to give you $350 for this watch. You have got to be better than that in terms of your standards. You have got to sell me a watch that you know is not going to be terrible. So that's really, really ugly. The fact that they're even willing to say that out loud is just so lazy. Oh my freaking God. So they need to do better than that in terms of their accuracy standards. I got very lucky on this watch, but if that's their standard, you might not. And that makes it really hard to recommend. Okay, the other ugly thing is the bracelet. Now, I love bracelets on watches. I love it on my Omegas here. I just, any watch that I buy needs to have a bracelet because that's how I like to wear them. But this bracelet that came with this watch is so bad that I couldn't actually wear it on the bracelet for review. I just couldn't bring myself to. It's brutal. So I wore it on NATO, and that's okay. It works great on a NATO strap, but still. The one good thing I can say about this bracelet is that it doesn't pull hairs. Well, I guess two good things, and that it's got lots of micro adjust holes. But it's got a lot of other issues too. First off, the adjustment system is a pain in the neck. It's a pin and collar system where you've got a pin and you need to drive it into a little metal collar inside this thing, and that's how you secure it. You can do it absolutely 100%, but it sucks because the pins are very soft and these collars are very hard, and you're trying to kind of hammer in, even using the right tools, trying to hammer these pins down inside there is terrible. This is way worse than the norm for pin and collar style bracelets. I hated adjusting this bracelet with a very, very strong passion. This is maybe a little too inexpensive to expect screw-down links, and unfortunately, the watch industry still isn't there. This guy isn't even screw-down, and this is way more expensive. But still, they need to do better than whatever that system is, because it's a freaking wreck. The other issue for me with this bracelet is the diver's extension. So you can see here that when you're wearing this bracelet on the watch, there's a bunch going on inside the bracelet here. In addition to having this little area, which is the extension that allows you to put the bracelet on, you've got this little area here, and this is the diver's extension. And the diver's extension on this is kind of terrible. I mean, it works just fine as a diver's extension. You pull here, pops open, and next thing you know, you've got yourself a little bit of extra space in order to put on your wetsuit or whatever it is that you're wearing. That's fine. It works, I guess. But the thing is, that diver's extension is just brutal when you're actually trying to wear this bracelet, because the diver's extension is constantly pushing inside of the bracelet. I mean, you've got a little area of increased height and topography, and this dug into my arm. This little mark here is 2 weeks later from wearing this for 2 days. This is ugly. This diver's extension is terrible. Most diver's extensions are built into the clasp itself. And given I'm comparing a much more expensive watch, but on my Omega Seamaster here, you've got yourself a diver's extension inside there. The way that you do it is you take the watch out, and then you just pull down on this little guy, and next thing you know, you've got yourself a diver's extension. Then when you're done with it, you just pop it back in. And the beautiful thing here is that it's flush. The entire bracelet is even on the inside there, and so you can wear it without irritation. But this guy sticking out here all the time is deeply ugly. Maybe if you had bigger wrists than I do, that would be less of a factor. Or maybe, I don't know, I just have wimpy wrists or something. But I hated this diver's extension with a passion, and I hated this bracelet as a passion as a result. And so I didn't wear this bracelet for the review, aside from, when it tried to injure me. So to me, that's the ugly on this watch, is that the accuracy specs from the factory are just insanely bad. And the bracelet is also a little bit crazy in its poor construction. Let's talk final verdict here. Look, final conclusion, this watch is actually really nice. I mean, the bracelet is terrible, let's admit this freely, and they're apparently happy to sell you a watch that is just completely busted in terms of accuracy. But assuming you get one that's decent, it's a pretty damn good watch for what it's trying to be. But you need to know what it's trying to be, because this watch is deeply not jewelry. I mean, let's be real here. These guys are absolutely jewelry watches. That's what they're to look pretty first and foremost. But this is a tool watch. This is meant to be worn out and about. It's meant to take abuse. It's not bad at all for diving. I assume it's pretty great, actually, if the dive instructors like it. And it's a good watch with a lot of really great features. And the price is the important part here, because this guy goes for $300 or so used, $340 new. Absolutely, you are making some some compromises in that price for getting it mechanical. If you were to buy a quartz watch at this price, you'd have a whole bunch more features, solar charging, you'd get much better accuracy, better durability. I am still a big fan of quartz for everyday carry and for just people who want to watch. But this is a mechanical watch I could very easily be happy with. Your $340 goes a long way in terms of the movement. You've got all the features you want here, hacking seconds, hand winding, things like that. Unlike a lot of Seiko's less expensive models, like the SKXs and whatnot. This guy was very accurate, showing that they can be very accurate, and it's a reasonably well done watch, and you know what? It's pretty damned attractive. I like the look of it. The fiance really doesn't like the look of it, but still, if it's to your taste, you're going to love it. And so if you're trying a mechanical watch, if you want to do something like this is actually a really great choice. You're paying enough here to get good quality, to get good function. You're getting something that still looks pretty okay, and you're doing it all without going so far up the curve of diminishing returns that you're throwing money away, chasing jewelry, or paying Swiss people to be Swiss. So there you go. I hope you found this interesting. You enjoyed my dive into this watch. But mostly, I hope that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.